Greetings, YouTube. Welcome back to the channel. I haven't done one of these videos all year, and I know this because I keep getting people who remind me to do it, and I say, I'll get to it at some point. I promise, eventually I'll get to it. Well, guess what? Today's that day where I talk about why this is my favorite experimental mastery setup and who it benefits. Now, I want to say a couple things off the top because this is the full suicides or ouchies, if you prefer to call it that, as my Battle Realm bestie Katie Candy does. The ouchies actually runs pretty well in this current victory track meta of Battlegrounds. So that's actually something that I know some people that I trust who are way better at Battlegrounds than I'll ever be, who run this right now and support it. And so I am going to say that off the top. I'm also going to say that my Battlegrounds mastery setup does not have this. This is a strictly questing one. I still don't use this because the recoil damage in Battlegrounds, and there have been a couple of times where I've won Battlegrounds fights in the last week where I've fought against people who did have the full ouchies up, and the difference was the recoil damage. I won like 45,000 points to 43,000 points, and I swear it was only because of the health they lost by having to use specials. So I'm not saying that that can't also be an advantage, because it certainly can, but right now, this is mainly an argument for Alliance Quest, because this is also not an Alliance War argument at all. Please do not hear this and think, I should switch these for Alliance War. Your Alliance might actually get very upset at you. But General Questing, Side Quest, Arena, you look at the champions I have, and you look at the PI and notice that I have no boost up. So this is all just naturally the rating of champions. Now, some people have said, Prof, how the heck is your Hercules rated so high? Well, I'll show you the mastery setup, because this is basically what this is focusing on. This is why this question's been so common. But keep in mind that even with this setup, he's at SIG 200. So if you have a Hercules that's at SIG 120 even, well, even with the same setup, obviously he's not going to be rated because he doesn't have the same SIGs. So that's a big caveat. Let's jump into it, though. This is how my Hercules is rated so high. So I have Courage at 3 out of 3 as the only thing that I wouldn't recommend for a PI change. I moved to Courage late last year to max it out. I had never done that before. And I actually had to take off a point in Deep Wounds and a point in Despair to make it happen. I have not regretted that switch at all. And I did notice, especially toward the end of fights, because of course Courage, your champions passively increase attack during their attacks by 20% while they're below 50% health. This is a mastery that you could argue is specifically targeted to Hercules. Because, of course, his Awakened ability has to be utilized when he's down to 1% health, which, of course, is below 20% health. So, this is a Hercules-friendly, big-time mastery setup. If you have champions who are Mystic-class champions, I would not recommend this mastery setup fully. Most of it I would. But if you look at my Mystic Dispersion, which we'll look at in a second, it does not at all cater to that class. However, my Battlegrounds mastery setup, once again, does. So, max out precision, max out cruelty. For a long time, I didn't have cruelty maximized, and it was fine. But between those two things and courage, I prefer this now. Also, keep in mind, let's say that the PI difference in your champions because of this setup lowers by 300. In the arena, that's like less than 100 points, which in the grand scheme of things is nothing. And so that's also the conclusion that I had to accept, because I used to want the highest rated champions possible for the arena. I didn't care if it was a 100-point difference. To me, that was a big difference. It's not really a big difference. I've had to be humbled by that and come to the light versus the dark side, so to speak. Now, this is what I would recommend most of any of my setups, because this gets me exactly enough points to max out willpower. For a long time, I actually had maxed out Coagulate. I took those 3 points out because, again, this is to benefit Hercules as well, and that really doesn't benefit Hercules. So when you are looking at Hercules as your main attacker, you want to maximize his damage and minimize the risks. And I still think, especially because one built-up Herc special 2, particularly if you have feats of strength over like 6, is enough to oftentimes knock out really high-rated defenders. You're not going to be taking a crazy amount of recoil damage like you would other champions. But you'll notice that it's a pretty bare-bones defensive mastery setup. And if you think this is bare-bones, I only have 8 points in proficiencies. And yes, 0 points, as I alluded to earlier, in Mystic Dispersion, which is kind of a sin in the eyes of quite a few players. So I am not looking, as always, for everybody to agree with me on this being the best mastery setup in a lot of different circumstances. But for what I want with Hercules as the main Michael Jordan MVP of my roster, this has been, time and time again, proven to save me thousands of units. It has saved me literally thousands of units. By the damage that I've done, by how fast I can get matches over, and then on the flip side, because it makes me do arena fights so much faster, I've made thousands of units by obviously clearing as many fights as I can in the arena. So it's saved me units by not dying as much, and it's made me units by clearing the arena more. If that doesn't make the game more fun, I don't know what does. And I know that a lot of you watching this don't care about the arena, and you're going to roll your eyes at that. But for an arena addict like myself, who has been a self-proclaimed, completely understands that this is the reality of my life, arena addict for a long time, this is the reality of my life. And I'm okay with that. So I hope that this helps you all. If you have Hercules and you want your Herc to be ranked higher or worth more than he currently is, this mastery setup will get him there. But remember, mine is also SIG 200. So if you have everything equal and it's not SIG 200, it'll be lower. If you do have a SIG 200, hopefully you'll see this and be like, hey, it's that Prof Hoff mastery setup. And I'd be happy to help you out for free. That's why I'm making this video.